It was the kind of silence that doesn't belong on live television, sharp, suspended, and heavy enough to make millions of viewers lean closer to their screens. Moments earlier, Rachel Maddow had cut across Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s answer during their much-anticipated primetime interview. The moment was tense, electric, and instantly viral. But what no one expected was that the sentence Kennedy spoke next, a steady, vulnerable, and unmistakably human, would change not only the interview, but the way viewers saw both of them. For an entire week before the broadcast, social media crackled with anticipation. Commentators called it the showdown, predicting a collision of personalities, politics, and pressure. Maddow, known for her sharp analysis and unflinching style, had built a reputation as a journalist who didn't let guests wander off the path of truth. Kennedy, on the other hand, had become a polarizing figure, beloved by some, criticized by others, but undeniably intriguing to audiences across the country. When the studio lights finally ignited the stage in a bright, clinical glow, both of them looked ready. Yet beneath the poised exteriors, a subtle tension pulsed like a second heartbeat. In the control room, a producer whispered a countdown. On social media, hashtags surged. In living rooms across America, families leaned forward, eager to see if this moment would bring clarity, or simply add another layer to the swirling uncertainty of the political season. Maddow began with practiced confidence. Her questions were pointed, fast, precise, impossible to dodge. Kennedy answered each one patiently, his tone measured, his gaze steady. But each exchange pushed the energy higher, the stakes sharper. Then Maddow asked a question that struck deeper than the usual political sparring. It wasn't about polls or policies. It was about impact, how the emotional and personal toll of being a figure constantly in the public eye. It invited vulnerability. Kennedy inhaled, preparing an answer, a more reflective, personal one. When Maddow abruptly cut him off, her voice sliced across his mid-sentence. Kennedy froze. The audience felt the snap of tension like a cord pulled too tight. Some viewers later argued it was a timing issue. Others claimed it was intentional. But whatever the cause, the moment crystallized into a fragile standstill between the interviewer and the interviewee. Kennedy exhaled slowly. Maddow finished her thought. The studio fell into an unnatural stillness. Then he spoke. "Rachel," he said calmly, "the truth is, I didn't come here to defend myself. I came here because people out there feel unheard, and I know what that feels like." It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't political. It was raw. Maddow's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough to be felt. A softening around the eyes, a pause in her breath. Something had changed. Kennedy didn't stop there. He leaned into the vulnerability Maddow's interruption had unintentionally exposed. He talked about the letters he received every day, from parents working multiple jobs who still felt they were failing their children, from veterans who carried invisible scars no one seemed willing to acknowledge, from young adults who confessed they were afraid of a future that felt more unpredictable with each passing year. He spoke about loneliness, the collective kind, the kind that seeped into the national consciousness, the kind that made people believe their voices didn't matter. What struck viewers most wasn't the content of his stories, but the emotion underneath them. Kennedy spoke not like a politician on a stage, but like a man who had known loss, pressure, expectation, and who had decided to step forward anyway. Maddow's tone changed with him. Her shoulders relaxed, the hard lines of her interviewer persona softened. She began asking not to challenge, but to understand. Their conversation shifted from a battle of talking points to something that resembled a bridge. For the next several minutes, they explored topics that usually ignite heated arguments, public health, political division, the erosion of trust in institutions, yet their exchange remained grounded. They disagreed, openly and firmly, but neither retreated into defensiveness. They both seemed determined to stay human, even when the subjects weren't easy. At one point, Maddow asked him what he hoped Americans would learn from this moment in history, what lesson he hoped would outlast campaigns, controversies, and headlines. Kennedy paused. The studio waited. Finally, he spoke. "That courage doesn't always look like victory. He said, "Sometimes it looks like showing up when you're misunderstood. Sometimes it looks like listening even when you're angry. And sometimes it looks like forgiving each other enough to start again." The words hung in the air, shimmering with sincerity. Even Maddow's eyes flickered with something unguarded, not agreement, necessarily, but appreciation. Recognition of a truth that stretched beyond politics. As the interview approached its final minutes, the transformation was undeniable. The expected clash had dissolved into something unexpectedly profound. Viewers could feel it. A rare moment of dialogue in a world dominated by arguments, a moment where two people from opposite perspectives found, if not unity, then at least respect. When the cameras cut and the credits rolled, both Maddow and Kennedy stepped away from the table looking lighter, as if the conversation had taken weight off their shoulders instead of adding to it. The audience reaction was immediate and intense. Across social platforms and discussion forums, viewers shared their disbelief, admiration, and even relief. Many said they felt inspired, others said they felt seen, and some admitted the interview challenged assumptions they'd held for years. They didn't just watch a political exchange. They watched two people rediscover the power of honest conversation. And in a time when interruptions often drowned out understanding, it was the sentence spoken after the interruption, a quiet, steady, and human that became the moment no one could forget. By the end, what lingered wasn't tension or controversy. It was something far rarer, a reminder that even divided, we still share a hope for connection, and that sometimes, the most powerful change begins with listening.